r/AskReddit by Reddit and chill. People no longer bound by their non-disclosure agreements. What can you now disclose? Funny story. Moments after I was unceremoniously fired because my tech skills were found to be insufficient, the bosses who fired me demanded to know the whereabouts of a hugely important computer file I had worked on. I refused to help them. I even cited the exact language of the NDA I was compelled to sign. I am prohibited from disclosing details of my employment with anyone, including past and current employees of the company. I expounded, adding, so ask someone who works here, because I don't. It was a great ducky moment that I still cherish 5 years later. But now I think I can disclose the truth. I only hid behind the NDA language because I had no clue where to find their damn computer file or even where to look. I suck with computers. Fired because my tech skills were found to be insufficient. I suck with computers. This checks out. How do you even get in this situation, LMAO? We need someone to manage these financial portfolios. You're a good CPA, so we're hiring you. Thank you. I can't wait to get started. Here's the F-site database we use, and here is the online portal we use to communicate with clients. Ducking what? The cupcake shop I used to work for claimed everything was homemade, but used Pillsbury cake mix as a base. I read a thread, I think it was a confessions thread on AskReddit, where a woman who ran a super successful home bakery business was literally just using Pillsbury cake mix. And this is how I learned what Pillsbury was, as we don't have it in England. Full stop. She had the odd hack or two and was seriously good at decorating apparently, but she was essentially just using cake mix. She even talked about how she felt like a fraud, got nauseous about going to the grocery store, and hated the sight or taste of cake. I remember this. She would log in once every few years and give updates. Last I read, she stopped doing cakes because it became too much for her. My mom does cakes as a side gig, and while she makes her own frosting from scratch, she uses boxed cake mix that she, too, passes off as her own. Probably way more common than anyone lets on. There's a local fast food chain in my area with a super popular chocolate cakes. Widely known is that they use mayonnaise. Not widely known is that other than that it's 100% Betty Crocker cake mix with Duncan Hines frosting. My graphic designer best friend won my town's Design the Centennial logo contest, despite having never set foot in the town. I worked for the radio station, and just did an interview with one of the organizers, where he lamented that there weren't very many entries. So I called my friend and said, "Want in on this?" He said, "Sure," as he lived on the other side of the country at the time. I spent the next day texting him photos of the town for inspiration. Anyway, when he won and they found out he was a professional graphic designer who lived on the other side of the country, they made him and me sign NDAs because the town was afraid people would think they brought in a ringer. Edit. Row. This kind of blew up. So let me answer some of the more common questions being brought up. How did they make you? They threatened to withhold the prize and you threatened to tell the public, which would be way worse PR-wise than what they alone wanted the NDA for. Presumably if they didn't sign the NDA, they wouldn't have picked the design. Did you hear? They whispered, keenly, so clandestine, so obscenely, so unseemly, so maligning, so extremely vile, inclining wicked crimes were here enacted, here portrayed, and here protracted, here achieved with evil pleasure far beyond the scope to measure. What, perhaps you ask with wonder, tore this very town asunder, split and rent the peace and order of this place from bound to border? What? I hear your consternation, dread and fear and trepidation. Lit the spark on such a candle. 'Twas a scandal. 'Twas a scandal. I dug up some ancient bones, gold, and Mycenaean tombs. I couldn't discuss the finds until the institution who ran the archaeological dig could publish the data. You can read about it here. Edit to add. I'm a classics student, not the one running the whole dig, but my role in it was very much legal and official. LOL. We knew to dig there because there was another tomb next to it, and it's located near a big Mycenaean Bronze Age palace. I only dug there for one summer, but it was a blast. If you're interested in archaeology, you should see if there are any local groups that you can volunteer with. This might be the coolest and least shady response. Alright. Deleted. I was a contractor for NASA. I still fully support the agency, but I was extremely bugged when I learned that each separate NASA center, for example, JPL, Kennedy, Ames, Goddard, hides many of its inventions and breakthroughs from the other centers so that when HQ is ready to assign a big mission, and a lot of dollars, to one center, they have a better chance to compete over the others. Look what we invented. Ames can't do this over there. Give us the next moon orbiter. The downside is that there is a ton of reinvention and duplicated efforts going on. Sometimes years of work go down the drain when another center does the same thing faster. My perspective was, you all work for NASA, share knowledge, collaborate. I was frequently ordered to tone down anything revealing when speaking to other centers. That's not at all different from how the big national labs used to work. The rivalry between Lawrence Livermore and Los Alamos is almost legendary. Supposedly they got better about sharing, but it wouldn't shock me if they were still up to the same hijinks. Not just true for NASA, true for many government agencies. The issue is that money is zero sum, and if one program is getting money, it is getting cut from another program. So everyone is fighting to get their share and avoid having to make staffing cuts. Fixing this would probably require a fundamental change in the executive branch as well as the appropriations process. We would have to move from a leadership system in which you have new political appointees coming in every few years who aren't familiar with the programs to permanent leadership who are focused on making all the different sub-agency departments work synergistically. Appropriations would have to change to have predictable funding levels for each program for several years. As a lawyer, I've viewed a lot of these and tort settlements. The most common use of the NDA is to keep the award amount quiet so everyone won't sue the company hoping to get that sweet settlement money. Edit. Several people have PM'd me about their NDAs, and if they can talk about this or that, I am not your lawyer. I don't give legal advice to non-clients. You shouldn't take legal advice from strangers on Reddit, but it's called a settlement because you settled the matter. Let it go. You got the hush money. Now do the hush. SMH. As a lawyer who represents plaintiffs that sign these settlements, I say over and over, do not go post this on Facebook. Don't tell your friends. Just say that it's resolved and you are happy with the outcome. Inevitably a week later I'll get an email from defense counsel with my client's Facebook link on some group we did. IT guys just got $XXXXXX. Man facepaming. Edit. LOL wow. Biggest karma post of my life. To answer the question then what? In a general answer, it entirely depends on the settlement agreement. Maybe in the corporate world the settlement has to be returned and the release of claims stands. There's a lot examples of losing a settlement agreement, but for our agreements, it would just nullify the agreement and put everyone back to square one, which would then likely settle again. So I just have to reach out my client, chew them out to remove everything, and then send a follow-up to defense counsel assuring them that it's not going to happen again. I like to add your friends and family will all start asking you for money. People will bring up old debts you owe them that you won't remember if they're real or not. Just keep it to yourself or you're going to hate it. This seems to work better than the threat of legal consequences for breaking an NDA. My dad brings up old debt any chance he gets, all through high school up to now. Your sister owes me money for my car they sold. Ask her. Your brother owes me money from when I paid for his college. Ask him. This should be higher up the list. It's scary how incompetent people just guffaw their way into positions of power and really have no idea how to run a business. I mean, to be fair, I'm talking some really big companies here. One of our clients was Coca-Cola, for example. I'm not afraid to mention them as they were one of the few clients that really had their shit together. Their data was usually pretty on point and they were extremely thorough. These big name companies make bank, but many of them had absolutely no clue where that bank was coming from. The key account managers just cared that their totals were good. Individual revenue streams didn't matter as long as in the end, the sum total was fine. Same in some big insurance company. Several millions of euros that are asked to be ignored when it comes to analysis and reporting. You know NDAs are only good if you have the money to sue. Worked with a company that didn't pay me, so I told them their NDA didn't apply. They threatened to sue. My response: you can't even afford to pay me. You sure as hell can't afford to sue. They also don't extend to keeping you from reporting illegal activity to the justice system. Some places may try to make people believe that and may even try to imply it in the NDA, but it has no legal standing. Doesn't illegal content and legal contracts immediately void the entire contract? Well, this is already public knowledge, and they forgot to have me sign an NDA anyway. But Savannah College of Art and Design's Ombudsman Sophia Bagnoli, the independent person who's supposed to represent students in cases of unfair treatment by the school, married one of the school's vice presidents and is now Sophia Oleto. It's definitely a conflict of interest, but she's still serving as independent ombudsman and currently refusing to help students get any kind of refund now that all their classes are online and they don't have access to the expensive equipment their expensive tuition is supposed to be paying for. Edit. Row. This blew up. For anyone affected by SCAD, whether it was the abrupt closure of the Hong Kong campus, financial burden, lack of access to facilities, poor e-learning quality, etc., you do still have recourse even if the ombudsman may be working against you. SCAD's accreditation is up for review with SaxCoc this year. SaxCoc will accept written complaints mailed to their office. Link below. Make sure to include documentation, things advertised by admissions, emails, financial statements, etc. That, unfortunately, seems to be the only way to make them improve. SaxCoc.org link and type equals policies. Edit 2. Sorry, I almost forgot. There were a large number of Chinese students who were accepted and given the standard due date for their enrollment fee of a few months, but then, after the outbreak of COVID-19, received another email from your admissions rep demanding payment of the enrollment fee within 3 days. That is not okay. Whether you paid the fee or not, please take the time to file a complaint with SaxCoc and send them that material. Both the acceptance documents and the later email demanding payment in 3 days. I may be remembering incorrectly, but doesn't SCAD have a lot of issues with student health, including abnormal attempted suicide rates with students? Wouldn't that fall under unfair treatment by the school? This seems really problematic. Sure does. Here's a read for you. Medium.com link at Stephanie Franklin /stress suicide in the Savannah College of Art and Design 2E02197DDD65. Row. Sincerely thank you for this. My youngest cousin attends SCAD and this really explains a lot. Since the quarantine I've noticed she's been doing much better mentally. I just assumed it was regular collegiate stress. When I was fired from Auntie Anne's in 2010, I signed a 10-year non-compete NDA contract, promising not to detail the baking secrets or work for another pretzel establishment. Well, that ended this year, so now I can run out and start a pretzel store because the secret I was keeping was making pretzels literally requires 2 products. One of them being water and the other a large bag of pretzel meal dust powder. Quite literally anyone with $2,500 can start a pretzel stand and make perfectly fine pretzels. It's not difficult whatsoever. Edit. I signed the letter when I was hired, but I got a copy with my termination letter. Well, you forgot to say what the secret browning agent is that all the pretzels get dipped into before they go on the sheet and into the oven. It's baking soda and water. Mystery solved. Also lemonade too. 4. 8. Refrigerate. I think I'm finally ready to let the world know my secret. If you've ever used VeriSite, the loading spinners you see when the report loads and waiting for anything, people kept complaining that reports were coming back too fast. So it must not be working right. It doesn't take long to complete a few hundred Google searches simultaneously. So the loading spinner just makes you wait a few seconds longer so it feels like more is happening. So glad to finally get that off my chest. Bonus fact. Edit. I also added applying phlebotinum, reticulating splines, and looking for cat memes as random loading messages, but they wouldn't let me do harassing at Ted Cruz on Twitter. This is a good one. Now we just need an elevator engineer to admit that the close door button doesn't actually do anything. To be blackballed by big elevator? You'll never see that. This reminded me of adding an egg to instant pancakes, cakes, brownies, etc. Not actually necessary. When Betty Crocker's instant baked goods brand first went on the market, her sales were poor. The team surveyed people and they were suspicious of baking from a powder. Adding the egg makes people feel that they're actually contributing to a baking process. Edit. U/which weighs up thinks I'm missing a detail. And they seem to be right. The originally introduced cake mix did not need egg. Or water for that matter. It was then revised to now require water and egg, or you can still make it without and it will be edible. But not for the best final product. Actually kind of better fits ARP's example. A step was added to make a process less convenient but somehow reassure the user. Here's a Psychology Today article with more detail. I worked at a small bakery in New York City when I was younger. Every morning the bakery would take their day-old cupcakes and deliver them to a tour company that did Sex and the City tours. The tour company would pass our cupcakes off as cupcakes from Magnolia, and significantly much more popular bakery. I went on that tour with my ex-wife and ate one of those cupcakes. Edit. The cupcake was pretty disappointing. Definitely tasted stale. After the cupcake, the tour took us to some swanky little underground bar where they fed us cosmopolitan martinis, and then it ended at a dildo store. They set us up for a good time. Is that wife's an ex-wife? She left in search for a real Mongolian cupcake. Edit. Wow, thanks for the silver. I misread the comment. Didn't know about Magnolia or South Park reference till now, lol. The owner of the company is an absolute psycho. They have been trying to hire developers for years now, and despite paying really well, they can't keep them. I quit after 3 days. I was trying to help out on a high priority bug on my 3rd day, when I said all the requests to X endpoint are failing, to which he replied, I see 1 out of 500 requests succeeding. Does that sound like all to you? He then called a company-wide all-hands meeting and proceeded to tell everyone how important it is that we all speak carefully, and that we don't need ducking retards like me lying to the company, making it harder to diagnose issues. I told him to go duck himself and quit on the spot. Turns out the company has a big history of this. My boss, who had been there for 2 weeks, had tried to quit the week prior, but was convinced to stay on to meet me. He left a few days after me. Apparently a few people got together and tried to tell the owner that he needs to watch how he talks to people, and he blew up on them about it too. I later heard that I was something like the 10th person to quit within their first month in a row. This is juicy. I like this one. Oh, I forgot one other part of this story that makes it really funny. They offered a quitting bonus thing since they were having so much trouble even getting people in the door for interviews due to a ton of bad company reviews. They had in the contract that you would be able to get a few thousand if you left and weren't fired within the first 90 days. Apparently it was the owner's idea. Well, when I told the owner to duck off, I quickly sent an email announcing my resignation, to which he replied all saying, let's have a phone conversation about this. It would be highly premature for you to leave on your 3rd day. I declined. The quitting bonus was contingent on signing a non-disparagement agreement. A few days after I left, I get an email from the owner's right-hand man sending me a link to an ex-company Facebook group where past employees go to network or something. I had no interest in that, so I declined. But I'm convinced that it was an attempt to get me to break my non-disparagement agreement. If I joined the group and talked shit about the company, he would try to sue for the quitting bonus back. I don't know for sure that's what it was, but it just stinks of that nutjob trying to be clever. Also, that quitting bonus is no longer offered on their recruiting page. Why the duck would you incentivize quitting? Star Wars Battlefront 2 EA will have microtransactions. The NDA was signed in 2016. I was getting more and more worried as the release date kept getting closer, and then it happened. The backlash was so strong that EA went down in the history books as most downvoted comment in Reddit's history. Any more details you can dish out about this? I remember when this all came to a head. Like back then, the build of the game I saw wasn't even a game. Everything was in PDF and in the planning stage of development. So I can confirm that the star cards and the whole BS progression system was planned for day 1. Also, Finn and Phasma were fully developed and playable as early as June 2017. Microtransactions and DLC are such the norm now that I feel companies aren't even trying to hide behind the idea that the DLC is developed after the game's initial release. I remember a time when the fact Finn and Phasma were done and playable before release would have been a big scandal in itself. McDonald's made me sign a NDA regarding a robbery that took place during a graveyard shift. They made me take a ducking polygraph test because they thought my ex and I were involved due to the simple fact that I had stopped by that day to pick up some documents. I was a manager. I had business to do. Duck you. McMurder. Edit. Thanks for the silver. 3. Edit 2. There are many questions. Some wonder if I made this up. Request details or explanations. I'll give some extra context and I'll head out. I was around 19-20 years old. This was almost a decade ago. I was pretty naive then. By the time I realized this might have been illegal, I mentioned to a co-manager and she advised me to not bring it up again as to not involve myself in trouble or damage my future job prospects. I worked at a franchise located in a rural area with an almost entire Latino population, where everyone knows each other. I took home some of the weekly schedules and production projections for highlighting. They would make me do this highlighting shit weekly. The store manager in charge would allow me to do this on a weekly basis. The police showed up to the restaurant, picked me up, held me at the investigation building for around 8 hours, and then they sent me home. When I passed the polygraph test, the area supervisor called again to mention that he appreciated that I took the polygraph, glad to hear I passed, and that he would always have my back. I roll. I left the job at McDonald's in 2014. At least it makes for a story to tell. Hell, the first day of my first job was at a Hardee's. We were robbed. It was really obvious my manager had set it up as there was over $1,000 in my register and she wouldn't swap out the till. Then when the robber was running off she yells out, "Wait, you forgot this," and gets the $50 and $100 bills from under the drawer. Then pretended to faint. After the police interviewed us they just left. She expected me to finish my shift and I just laughed and walked out never to return. Bruh, what the duck? That seems almost surreal to me. No way she got away with it, did she? I had to sign an NDA to work at this tech company, and I'm still waiting to accidentally overhear something cool so I can feel special for knowing something important but being legally barred from disclosing it. Pro tip: 99% of the other people there are in the same boat. Start talking loudly on the phone, or in a stage whisper with a colleague after overtly double checking, "Hey, you signed the NDA right?" And you can at least make everyone else feel special. Well, the data screw up was just another package library issue. They've reverted it now. But you can't roll back whatever's in the wind already, so did the NSA say anything about the strange numbers you were seeing? What do you mean plead the fifth? Sure, it runs faster now, but aren't you a little worried about the radiation? Ducking, like and subscribe.